is a tough day for everyone. It's tough for the crews, it's tough for the officers.
An Oshawa home up in flames, 2 lives tragically lost.
The community mourns the loss of a mother and her daughter, as 2 other family members battle serious injuries from the devastating blaze. Good evening. Fire crews say the home was engulfed in flames and smoke when they first arrived this morning. A
family of 4 was inside the home when the blaze broke out. 2 did not survive. CTV's Scott Lightfoot joins us live from the scene on McGrigor Street in Oshawa with the latest. Scott.
Natalie, you can see behind me, Oshawa firefighters still remain here at this house. So too do fire investigators. Now, what they're trying to determine is both how and why this fire started, but also why 3 members of this family didn't make it out on their own.
It was just after 8 this morning when the 911 calls came in.
It was a huge fire. It was going really, it was bad. There was smoke everywhere.
Police were the first to arrive on scene at 70 McGrigor Street near King and Simcoe in Oshawa.
When our crews arrived on scene, they encountered heavy smoke and flames from all levels of the house.
Firefighters arrived minutes later. The blaze quickly upgraded to a 2-alarm fire.
Just heard them say there was a child in there, and then my heart dropped.
Firefighters worked to gain access to the burning home. They could be seen entering through a 2nd-story window, moments later returning, holding the limp body of a young girl.
They had the little girl, but they also had her sister in their arms, one of the firemen. And they gave it to an ambulance, and they all took off.
2 girls and their mother were pulled from the fire.
At this time, I can confirm the 46-year-old female has been pronounced deceased, and 9-year-old female has also been pronounced deceased.
A 12-year-old girl was taken to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. The 56-year-old husband and father managed to get out of the home on his own and was also rushed to hospital. Police say they are both in life-threatening condition.
It is a tough day for everyone. It's tough for the crews, it's tough for the officers.
Now the focus shifts to investigating how and why the fire started.
There's significant structural damage to the inside of the house. The 2nd floor is collapsed into the main floor, and the main floor is collapsed partially into the basement. Investigators from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office are on scene.
I think just in the chaos of what was happening in the moment, nobody has reported to me that they heard any smoke alarms, but that doesn't mean that they weren't there or they were there. I'm not sure.
Whether or not there were working smoke alarms at the time of the fire will be a key part of the investigation.
There is some indication that one of the occupants was awoken by smoke alarms.
Into why not everyone managed to make it out on their own.
If they had working smoke alarms, they should have been able to evacuate the house safely.
In the meantime, 2 people are dead, 2 others are in hospital, and the neighborhood is in mourning.
It's just very sad. It's just sad.
Now, fire investigators tell CTV News that the family dog also died in the fire. Give you some indication of just how strong the smoke and flames were when first responders arrived. We're told several first responders actually had to be taken to hospital to be checked for smoke inhalation, all expected to be okay. Reporting live in Oshawa, I'm Scott Lightfoot. Nathan and Natalie, back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Also tonight, Eyes in the Sky helped to hunt down 3 suspects in connection with a carjacking. We'll show you the dramatic police video of the takedown a little later in the newscast.
Turning now to the trade war and the high-profile breakfast meeting of 2 of this country's most powerful politicians in an Etobicoke diner.
Talking economics over eggs, Doug Ford and Mark Carney pledged a united front on Trump's tariffs on the same day Ottawa slapped new countermeasures on U.S. metals. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us now with the very latest. Siobhan.
Well, those measures from Ottawa landed hours after the U.S. applied tariffs on steel and aluminum at midnight. Now, the Premier seemed impressed with the incoming Prime Minister today. He's somebody he thinks can repaint our relationship with the U.S. A breakfast meeting between the Prime Minister-designate and the Premier of Canada's biggest province. Mark Carney swinging by for a first sit-down with Doug Ford. The Premier called the chat positive and productive.
It went very well. Yeah, he's a real gentleman.
In Carney, he sees a chance for a reset with the United States.
It's going to be a better relationship than with Prime Minister Trudeau. No disrespect to Prime Minister Trudeau. I can tell you one thing, Mark Carney is extremely astute business mind.
Carney was touring a Hamilton plant on the day damaging steel and aluminum tariffs hit.
I'm ready to sit down with President Trump at the appropriate time under a position where there's respect for Canadian sovereignty, and we're working for a common approach, a much more comprehensive approach for trade.
Morning, everyone.
At the same time, Canada is pushing back.
We will not stand idly by while our iconic steel and aluminum industries are being unfairly targeted.
Adding 25% reciprocal tariffs on $30 billion of U.S. steel, aluminum, and related goods.
Computers, sports equipment, and cast iron products.
Tomorrow, LeBlanc, Canada's industry minister, and Premier Ford will meet U.S. trade officials in Washington.
I want to find out where their bar is set. You know, rather than keep moving the goalpost, I want to find out how quickly you want to move forward.
Hoping to understand what the U.S. might want in a renegotiated free trade deal. But the finance minister says that's not on the table, instead trying to prevent another round of tariffs in a few weeks.
Getting to April 2nd, with the objective of obviously removing all of these tariffs that are applying to the Canadian economy.
This meeting set up after Ford paused a surcharge on electricity to 3 U.S. states.
We had a problem with Ontario and they dropped that.
President Donald Trump continues to insist the U.S. has been given a raw deal by Canada and other nations.
If they charge us 25 or 20% or 10% or 2% or 200%, then that's what we're charging them.
We still don't have a lot of detail about what tomorrow's meeting will look like, but we do know the key figure for the U.S. will be Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Natalie, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan. Well, with a nickname like Steel Town, you can bet the tariffs imposed on Canadian metal today are the talk of the town in Hamilton. As CTV's Sean Leithong reports, what has been feared for weeks is now a reality, and residents are concerned about what lies ahead.
The heart of the Canadian steel industry is beating, and production is active in the east end of Hamilton despite a new 25% tariff imposed by the United States. At the donut stop near the steel mills, Lori Borey says she talks to steel workers daily, and they talk about tariffs a lot.
Every day, like every, I don't know, half an hour to an hour, somebody will come in, somebody will say something.
The topic that's become hard to ignore has become a real fear that U.S. President Donald Trump's actions could cost people their livelihoods.
They're not happy. They can't believe that he's doing this, and everybody's afraid of losing their homes and jobs.
In Hamilton, steel is ingrained in the city's rich history, where century-old steel makers like Stelco and DeFasco are down the street from the first ever Tim Hortons. The city has endured more than 100 years of economic highs and lows. Now there's concern among the city's leaders that this trade war could devastate the industrial base.
So several weeks ago now, already companies were telling me that their orders were starting to dry up. Why? Because people don't want uncertainty.
At CFF Stainless Steel, General Manager Brad Harrison says they used to buy 80% of their product from the United States, but ever since the first Trump presidency, they've started moving off American products.
So at that time, we made a decision to start importing more product from Taiwan, Vietnam, all around the world.
Stainless steel isn't produced in Canada, and therefore CFF has to import. And Harrison says he has seen another shift in the market recently.
We started to get requests for quotes 3 months ago where customers were requesting that they get materials that were not U.S. content.
So whether it's in stores or in the factories, there's a growing sentiment.
The Canadians are just getting fed up with what's going on, and if they can buy products that are either Canadian manufactured or manufactured somewhere else in the world, they'd prefer to do that at this point.
Hoping to move away from the uncertain towards stability. Sean Leithong, CTV News.
We have breaking news from Ottawa, where Mark Carney will be sworn in as Prime Minister on Friday. Sources have also confirmed to CTV News his cabinet will also be sworn in. The former Bank of Canada governor is replacing Justin Trudeau after winning the Liberal leadership on Sunday.
Still ahead on CTV News, the Bank of Canada cuts its key interest rate in the face of a trade war, the impact on consumer confidence amid tariff tensions. Coming up.
Time now for a check on the forecast. Here's a live shot of the city. A noticeable difference in temperatures today and tonight compared to yesterday. Much cooler. Back to wearing the hat and gloves. But the good news is is just a one-off. The warmer air returns tomorrow. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey, Nathan. I think many of us are already looking forward to that, but you're right. What a difference today. You know, yesterday we made it to a high of 13 degrees in the city of Toronto. Today, the best we could do was 1 degree, and it is 0 right now, below freezing in places like Barrie and Peterborough. Mild once again across southwestern Ontario, 6 degrees in Windsor, but that too pales in comparison to the last few days. Now, we've been dealing with a pretty raw east wind today. That's helped make it feel quite cool. Winds quite strong, in fact, around Hamilton and London. Not much to show you on the satellite and radar imagery. We have had more cloud cover today than we had yesterday and the day before that. -2 is our forecast overnight low, wind chill -4. And you're going to feel that chill waking up tomorrow morning. But by the afternoon, we are back on the mild side. Lots of sunshine in store as well. We'll talk all about it coming up in your weather forecast. For now, Natalie, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Toronto police say they continue to work around the clock to locate suspects in the recent mass shooting in Scarborough. 12 people were injured when 3 gunmen opened fire inside the Piper Arms pub on Friday evening. 7 people were hit by bullets, while 5 others were injured by shrapnel or broken glass. None of the injuries is considered life-threatening. So far, no arrests have been announced. Toronto police released a statement that reads in part, officers have been working around the clock, gathering evidence, speaking with witnesses, and pursuing every lead to identify and locate those responsible. We will provide updates on this active and complex investigation as soon as it is appropriate to do so.
The province's Special Investigations Unit has been called in after an incident at Dufferin Mall last night that sent 2 people to hospital. At around 8 p.m., the police watchdog says the store's loss prevention officer was involved in an interaction with a 37-year-old man. According to the SIU, a police officer then used his conducted energy weapon on the suspect. He fell to the ground, was arrested, and transported to hospital, where he was diagnosed with a serious injury. The loss prevention officer was also hospitalized. The SIU is called in whenever police are involved in an incident that results in death, serious injury, or allegations of sexual assault.
We turn now to a carjacking crackdown. Dramatic video of the chase and arrest of 3 teen suspects who tried to flee officers on foot.
A bird's-eye view of the takedown captured on camera by a police helicopter. CTV's John Musselman joins us live with the details. John.
Well, Nathan, this started as a knife-point carjacking and it ended in a pursuit in this Scarborough neighborhood. This video is from the York Regional Police helicopter. It shows the chase and arrest of 3 youths in connection with a carjacking last week in Scarborough. Toronto police say it began when a suspect entered the rear door of a car and held a knife against the driver's throat, demanding the keys. The victim complied and got out of the car.
Want to get some distance?
The suspect took off in the car. That's when Toronto police, with support from the York Regional Police helicopter, were able to track the vehicle to a residential area near Military Trail in Ellesmere. Police boxed it in this school parking lot. The suspect can be seen on the helicopter camera running through a townhouse complex. Officers on foot with police dogs were able to track them down and bring the suspects into custody.
There was a big noise. I think he ran into the car, like different cars, and then he came out of the car and ran towards our community into the bushes behind the buildings. And then many people followed him.
The collaboration is great.
Inspector Joe Mattis is with the Toronto Police Hold-Up Squad. He says the violence is extremely concerning. The motorist was targeted when he pulled into a plaza to get a coffee.
Be aware of your surroundings. If you feel that you're being followed, take a different route, go to a local police station, pull in the lot there, phone a friend and be on a phone. Do anything that makes yourself less of a target.
Inspector Mattis says home invasions and break-and-enters targeting vehicles are down 10% compared to the same time last year, but carjackings are up 11%. 3 youths, including 2 16-year-olds and a 17-year-old, have been charged in connection with this incident.
These youths are being recruited by other individuals to carry out these crimes.
Police say cooperation between Toronto Police and York Regional Police were key in making these arrests. And investigators say tips for motorists: whenever you're in your car, just make sure you automatically lock the doors when you're driving, just to be on the safe side. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. Toronto police have deleted a recent episode of one of their official podcasts after officers made comments relating to Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel.
A lot of people after October 7th started learning about Islam.
They did, yeah.
And they said, okay, what is it with the religion that why is it so hated? You know what I mean? Why
the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs says it was deeply troubling to see an officer in uniform suggest a positive outcome stemming from the atrocities of October 7th, while failing to acknowledge the violence carried out by Hamas that day. The group is calling for an investigation into how those comments and others were allowed to be published on an approved police platform. Toronto police responded saying, "We acknowledge that a recent episode of our podcast, Project Olive Branch, has caused significant upset and concern in the Jewish community and beyond. That was not our intention, and we apologize. The podcast has been removed." Chief Demke has ordered a review of our procedures and content to ensure it aligns with our commitment to respectful and inclusive engagement while maintaining impartiality.
Hoping to offset some of the impacts of the ongoing trade war, today the Bank of Canada cut its key interest rate for the 7th straight time.
CTV's Rahim Ladani has more on the potential impact on Canadian consumers and the role tariffs could play in getting our economy back on track.
For homeowner Diane and her dog Gigi, this is the perfect moment for lower interest rates.
We just bought a condo, so it will help us in the new place, and then plus we have to sell our current one, so hopefully people are more interested in purchasing now that the rates have gone.
For the 7th consecutive time, the Bank of Canada has cut the key interest rate, a 25 basis point drop, bringing the policy rate to 2.75%. While inflation remains close to the central bank's 2% target, its governor warns of a new crisis, which it cannot offset.
Depending on the extent and duration of new U.S. tariffs, the economic impact could be severe. The uncertainty alone is already causing harm.
As the central bank weighs both the drag on economic growth and upward pressures in prices tied to the trade war, consumer confidence is shaken.
Yeah, we're more worried about the tariffs than the interest rates, to be honest.
The Bank of Canada has been aggressive in cutting its key interest rate. However, that hasn't directly translated to more home sales in the GTA. According to the Toronto Real Estate Board, sales were down 27% last month compared to February 2024. For some renters in the Liberty Village neighborhood, the interest rate cuts aren't enough to help them move into home ownership.
It helps the people who already have mortgages, who already have hundreds of thousands of dollars in financing. It does nothing for those of us who don't have homes, who don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, who don't have generational wealth.
Canada's key interest rate has now shrunk by 225 basis points in the last 9 months, and some economists are predicting more rate cuts could be on the horizon.
Maybe one cut, maybe two cuts, but we're likely to get the core rate down to 2.5, maybe even lower, 2.25% by the summer. So if you are thinking of taking out a variable rate mortgage, it could well get cheaper.
The BOC's next interest rate decision is set for April 16th. Rahim Ladani, CTV News.
Like Canada, Europe is also being hit with increased U.S. tariffs on aluminum and steel. Today, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly said she will continue working with the EU on a coordinated response.
We are having lots of conversations with Europeans right now. I'll be meeting with the foreign ministers from, of course, Germany, France, Italy, the foreign minister of the EU, as well as the British one. And I know that the Prime Minister designate is going to reach out to many of our European friends.
The European Union is raising duties on American beef, poultry, bourbon, and jeans, among other products. They will take effect next month and impact up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods. But the 27-nation bloc insists it will always remain open to negotiation. The UK is not imposing retaliatory tariffs, nor is Australia or Mexico.
Mélanie Joly says she'll speak to the U.S. Secretary of State about the tariffs during this week's G7 foreign ministers meeting in Quebec. Marco Rubio arrived this morning for the gathering. Another major focus of the talks will be a possible 30-day ceasefire deal between Ukraine and Russia. Kyiv supports the U.S. proposal, saying it would allow time to end the war that would include security guarantees. The Americans insist it's now up to Moscow to make a decision. The Kremlin says it's waiting for detailed information from the United States. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has more details on the meeting that officially gets underway tomorrow.
The message from the U.S. Secretary of State is he won't be bringing up taking over our country. But Marco Rubio will be hard-pressed to avoid facing questions about what President Donald Trump has said about annexing Canada. Ahead of tomorrow's G7 Foreign Ministers Summit here in Charlevoix, where Rubio's attendance has quickly become a focal point, especially for Canada, the Secretary of State says he'll talk about shared interests and not annexing our country.
That's what the meeting is about. It is not a meeting about how we're going to take over Canada.
But he did reiterate Donald Trump's notion that Canada would be better off as a 51st state.
He says if they became the 51st state, we wouldn't have to worry about the border and fentanyl coming across because now we would be able to manage that. He's made an argument that it's their interest to do so. Obviously, the Canadians don't agree, apparently.
Canadian sovereignty and identity are non-negotiable. Canadians have had enough, and we are a strong country. We'll defend our sovereignty, we'll defend our jobs, and we'll defend our way of living.
Now, that could make for some tough talk here tomorrow morning when Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly hosts a bilateral meeting with Rubio, where I'm told tariffs and U.S.-Canada relations will be top of the agenda. As for the larger agenda here in Charlevoix, issues relating to the geopolitical landscape will be top priority, including the situation in the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. Secretary of State is coming off a positive meeting with his Ukrainian counterparts. Jeremy Sharon, CTV News, Charlevoix, Quebec.
There is more good news tonight about the Pope's health as he battles double pneumonia. A chest scan yesterday has confirmed improvements in his condition. The pontiff has been stable for more than a week, but there is no time frame yet for his release from hospital. On Monday, doctors said the Pope was no longer in immediate danger. Today, he again followed the Vatican's spiritual retreat remotely and resumed physical and respiratory therapy after what officials called a quiet night.
A long-awaited high-flying rescue mission is scheduled to begin in less than 2 hours from now. A SpaceX capsule is slated to lift off at 7:48 p.m. en route to the International Space Station. It'll deliver a new crew to the orbiting lab and then return the current crew to Earth. And that includes Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, two NASA astronauts who've been in orbit since June. They were only supposed to stay at the space station for about a week, but numerous issues with the Starliner capsule prompted NASA to declare it too risky to use for the return trip home.
Meanwhile, a total lunar eclipse is set to begin tomorrow night and continue into Friday morning. It happens when the moon is full and aligns perfectly with the Earth and Sun. Our planet casts a shadow that totally blocks the moon, which appears red. The best viewing will be from North America and South America, and there is no need to use any special glasses or equipment if you want to catch a glimpse.
Back here on Earth, we'd like to show you a Texas-sized conveyor belt that's 67 kilometers long. It snakes across the oil fields of the southwest U.S., transporting millions of tons of sand for hydraulic fracturing, named the Dune Express. It runs from Kermit, Texas to Lee County, New Mexico. The longest conveyor belt in the United States has a freight capacity of almost 12 metric tons and was designed to bypass traffic.
Coming up on CTV News, vaccinating against COVID-19 without a needle. Researchers in Hamilton launched clinical trials of a vaccine that you inhale, the Made It McMaster formula, a little later in the newscast.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, 6 months ago, we did a story with a woman who was overcharged for 7 years on her gas bill. She was only refunded for 2 years, so she filed a complaint with the Ontario Energy Board, and she just got some good news. I'll have an update. That's just ahead.
Well, perhaps not surprisingly, ice coverage on the Great Lakes has gone down with all this mild weather we've been experiencing. 13% total ice coverage at this point, and any smaller lakes with ice on it should be considered unsafe at this point. Here's part of the reason why: more mild weather on the way. 8 degrees, our forecast high for tomorrow with sunny skies, and it gets even warmer into the weekend. But there's a catch, a rainy catch at that. A full look at your weekend forecast is coming up, and stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
No one wants to pay more than they have to for their utility bills, which is why you should study them closely to make sure they're accurate.
Back in September, CTV News brought you the story of a Mississauga woman who had been overcharged $4,500 on her natural gas bill. And tonight, we have an update. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Natalie and Nathan. The woman discovered she had been overcharged for 7 years on her gas bill. At the time, Enbridge said there was a mistake, but the most they had to refund her was for 2 years. But the woman complained to the Ontario Energy Board and just won her case.
That is totally not right and unfair.
We spoke with Portia Choi of Mississauga last September. She was concerned her Enbridge gas bill was too high and asked her neighbor if they could compare statements. That's when she discovered her customer charge was more than $77 a month, while her neighbor's was less than $21.
I was upset, and I can't understand how this mistake can be made.
We found out she was being charged as a business and not a homeowner. Enbridge charges businesses a commercial rate for natural gas and homeowners a residential rate. But on your Enbridge bill, it just says customer charged, so Choi had no idea she'd been overpaying for years. She'd been charged a commercial rate for 7 years, meaning she was overcharged $4,500.
I should be able to get back my overcharge money.
When Enbridge reviewed Choi's case, they agreed there was a mistake and refunded her $1,428, saying they were only responsible for 2 years of overpayments. Choi felt she should get back the entire amount, an additional $3,000. With CTV's help, she contacted the Ontario Energy Board and filed a complaint, and she just got good news.
Thank you very much, CTV.
In a statement, the board said the Ontario Energy Board is committed to protecting energy consumers' interests. We were pleased to learn Enbridge provided Ms. Choi a refund for the full period of overbilling. It took 6 months, but Enbridge just refunded Choi another $3,000, which for her was better late than never.
And you care so much for the little guy and take care of us, and you make my day and you make my life really happy again.
And if you have a complaint with your electricity or gas provider, you should try to settle it with them first. But if you can't, you can file a complaint with the Ontario Energy Board. They'll review your case to make sure the proper rules were followed. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, the sun is now setting on another great day of March break. I love that the sun is still up after 6 o'clock at night. And I will say, too, I was out with the dog last night. The moon, big, beautiful, and bright as well.
Everything's good. The sun is good, being out so late, and plus you get the moonlight as well. It's perfect. And also the weather's getting better, too.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about that lunar eclipse that is going to be happening. You know, skies look like they will be clear through the overnight hours when that is expected to happen. So there's some good news if you want to check that out. As for today, we've had a little bit of cloud cover. It's been our coolest day of the week, but we still had a nice sunrise this morning, too. Here's what that looked like. Beautiful. You know, the sunrise time today was about 7:36 a.m. Sunset time today is 7:20. So we are getting closer and closer to that spring equinox, and that's when the daytime and nighttime hours are equal. A reminder that spring officially arrives next week, Thursday, March the 20th at 5:01 a.m. Mark your calendars. It's starting to look and feel a little more like spring, not just here at home in southern Ontario, but it's a little bit warmer today in parts of western Canada and in northern sections of Ontario. Not as bitterly cold as it's been the last few days. We were a little bit colder today here in the south. We made it to an afternoon high of 1 degree in the city of Toronto. And then overnight tonight, we're going to fall to around -2 degrees, wind chill -4. You'll likely notice that wind chill as you are waking up tomorrow morning. But then look at the afternoon. Back into the double digits across southwestern Ontario. 9 degrees for you in Welland, 8 in the Aurora area, perhaps 7 in Burlington with mainly sunny skies. A little bit cooler the further north you go, but still at 6 degrees this time of year in Huntsville. Not bad at all. Satellite and radar imagery looks like this. Again, we have had a little more in the way of cloud cover, a little bit of light flurry activity in some areas today, not everywhere. And then tonight, conditions are going to be quiet, calm. We have a low pressure system to the north that's going to be a miss for us. Let me set the forecast radar in motion for you. There's midday tomorrow. Again, conditions looking pretty good. Mainly sunny skies, bit of an increase in cloud at night, and then Friday daytime also looking quite bright. It's as we head into the weekend that the next round of active weather arrives. First with a few showers overnight into Saturday, and then as we make our way into Saturday afternoon, plan on there being wet weather. And at this point, it's looking like it's going to be soggy at times Saturday night and into the day on Sunday. Maybe 5 to 10 millimeters of rain for Saturday, perhaps more than that on Sunday, especially if we get an embedded thunderstorm. We're also anticipating perhaps some gusty winds this weekend too. Let's talk temperatures. 8 degrees for Thursday. 13 on Friday. Looks like a spectacular day to get outside. Still 13 degrees on Saturday, but of course, then we have that rain. Temperature starts to fall a little bit into the day on Monday, a seasonal high of 4 degrees. But look at this, temperature climbs back into the teens through the middle part of next week. That's the weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Still ahead, Toronto's iconic Casa Loma enchanted like never before. The urban castle now a storybook setting for a favorite fairy tale. The Disney magic coming up. Even though we already have a vaccine for COVID-19, researchers continue to investigate new and better ways to protect the public.
Now, researchers at McMaster University are launching clinical trials of a COVID-19 vaccine that can be administered without a needle. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan explains.
It's an inhalable vaccine called AeroVax.
The research assistant will help you put the nose clip on your nose.
We need a device that will really generate a very fine mist that can be breathed all the way down deep into the lung, where there can be an immune response develop that we hope will be protective against COVID and perhaps other respiratory infections.
Dr. Fiona Smale says COVID infections are still happening and still causing deaths.
What this does is it harnesses the immune cells that are within the mucosa, and we use those to generate an immune response.
The development of a new vaccine and delivery system was sped up since McMaster had already been working on an inhalable vaccine against tuberculosis for the past 20 years.
What we need to do is continue to position ourselves either for a resurgence of COVID, which I suspect is very likely, and also to understand what type of vaccines we really need for the upcoming challenges that we have.
Smale says previous efforts targeting nasal tissues are less effective. Nasal mucosa is good at filtering out big particles, but doesn't work as well at protecting the lungs. And the inhaled delivery of AeroVax could be an advantage for those hesitant about needles. The AeroVax research team is hoping to get 350 participants for their phase 2 trials. They're looking for people age 18 to 65 who've had at least 3 doses of an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine and never received an AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, with no lung disease or COVID-19 infections or vaccinations in the past 3 months, and who's able to participate in person at one of the 3 centers in Hamilton, Ottawa, or Halifax. Go to aerovax.ca for more information. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Toronto Public Health has issued a warning about 2 potential measles exposures linked to international travel. Officials say the virus may have spread on March 2nd on Air Canada Flight 002 from Tokyo to Toronto. Then the infected individual was at Pearson Airport's Terminal 1 from around 4:50 p.m. to 7:40 p.m. Toronto Public Health says the measles virus is highly contagious and can linger in the air or on surfaces for hours. Officials are advising anyone who may have been exposed to verify their measles vaccination status and to monitor for symptoms until March 23rd.
Comedian and talk show host Rosie O'Donnell revealed this week that she's moved to Ireland, citing concerns over the political climate in the U.S.
Although I was never someone who thought I would move to another country, that's what I decided would be the best for myself and my 12-year-old child. And here we are.
In a video posted to TikTok, O'Donnell said she made the move in mid-January, referring to the Trump administration's policies regarding the LGBTQ2S+ community. She added she hopes to return to the U.S. when it's, quote, safe for all citizens to have equal rights.
Decades after the original movie, a long-awaited sequel to cult comedy classic This Is Spinal Tap is moving ahead. Today, producers shared a teaser for Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues. The original 1984 mockumentary followed the fictional British band on a U.S. tour. Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer will reprise their roles in the sequel, directed once again by Rob Reiner. Paul McCartney, Elton John, and Garth Brooks are expected to appear in the new film as well. It is set to release in September.
I wish for a friend.
And Disney released the official trailer for its live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. The movie tells the story of a young orphan in Hawaii who befriends an alien that crash-landed on Earth. The original animated version debuted in 2002. The reimagined film will debut May 23rd.
Well, it is Toronto's castle in the heart of the city, and during March break, there is a little more magic coming out of Casa Loma.
As CTV's Jessica Smith reports, a Disney fairy tale princess is being brought to life.
Can you tell me who's your favorite princess of all time?
Snow White.
You can step into an enchanted world without ever leaving the city.
First thing that came to mind was Casa Loma. I mean, look around, it's beautiful in here. It's the perfect backdrop for our story.
The Snow White exhibit at Casa Loma is celebrating the iconic Disney film with an interactive pop-up exhibit ahead of the new adaptation's debut March 21st.
It's so nice to see families and young kids coming through in their princess dresses.
Free for kids under 3, there is something for every generation to enjoy, from interactive stations to acrobatic performances.
We got to have a daughter and mommy date.
Well, there's different experiences at different levels, different touch points. There's the castle itself, so it's not just one tour, it's an entire experience.
Holding space for everyone to live out their enchanted dreams in real life.
I'm a princess.
Because who doesn't love a fairy tale? Doesn't matter how old you are. This is for all ages.
With a touch of magic in every room, the enchanted experience here at Casa Loma runs all the way through until March 20th. Jessica Smith, CTV News, Toronto.
Also tonight, shoring up Toronto's ferries. City Hall pledges to bring this service up to speed with industry standards as it works to fix the fleet.
You have a new government, but the same commitment.
Updating our top stories now. Sources tell CTV News that Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney will officially take office on Friday. The new federal Liberal leader met with Premier Doug Ford today, and the response to U.S. tariffs was at the top of the agenda. Ford called the chat positive and productive. This comes as the U.S. imposes tariffs on steel and aluminum, and Ottawa retaliates. The Premier and federal ministers will meet with U.S. trade officials in Washington tomorrow.
It is a tough day for everyone. It's tough for the crews. It's tough for the officers.
A 46-year-old woman and her 9-year-old daughter are dead after a house fire this morning in Oshawa. Emergency crews responded to the home on McGrigor Street near King and Simcoe just after 8 a.m. A 12-year-old girl and a 56-year-old man are still fighting for their lives in hospital. The Ontario Fire Marshal's office is investigating the cause.
Youths are being recruited by other individuals to carry out these crimes.
And Toronto police are sharing dramatic new footage from a carjacking investigation over the weekend. Investigators say a victim had their car taken at knife point near Victoria Park in Sheppard on Saturday evening. But with the support of the York Police helicopter, officers were able to arrest 3 suspects after a vehicle and foot chase. 2 16-year-olds and a 17-year-old now face charges.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
A 25% levy on Canadian steel and aluminum leads business headlines tonight. BNN Bloomberg's Morella Fernandez has more on the impact and on how Canada is striking back.
Ottawa is targeting almost $30 billion worth of American products imported into Canada with a 25% tariff. American steel and aluminum will be hit, but other goods are also on the list, including sports equipment and water heaters. These tariffs take effect tomorrow. The finance minister says we will not stand by while our industries are targeted. Now, the tariffs announced today are on top of the ones Ottawa announced in the first week of March. The Bank of Canada is calling the trade war a new crisis that has led it to cut the key lending rate. The quarter-point cut was widely expected and puts the borrowing rate at 2.75. The bank is concerned the trade war will slow growth in Canada and increase inflation, which has been coming in around the bank's 2% target. Europe is also being targeted by Trump and announced counter tariffs today. The union's levies target steel, aluminum, and textiles and cover about $28 billion American in goods. The tariffs target items sourced from Republican states like Alabama, Georgia, and Virginia. Let's take a look at the markets today. The Canadian dollar ended the day up, hitting 69.57. West Texas Intermediate also up to 67.7. According to our latest fix on Western Canadian Select, it's up to 54.87. And the TSX shot up 175 points to 24,423. Those are your business headlines. In the BNN Bloomberg newsroom, I'm Morella Fernandez.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Meanwhile, a new Leger poll suggests national pride is on the rise amid Donald Trump's tariffs and threats against Canada's sovereignty. An online survey of more than 1,500 people found that the number of people expressing pride in being Canadian has grown to 86% this month, up from 80% in November. This comes as a separate Angus Reid poll shows Canadians remain overwhelmingly opposed to the idea of becoming part of the United States.
The city is moving ahead with efforts to reform and update ferry service to the Toronto Islands. On summer weekends, Toronto's ferry service is the third largest by passenger volume in all of Canada. Last year, it carried more than 1.4 million passengers, but it had a number of incidents in recent years, including a crash in 2022 that left 20 people hurt. The crash prompted upgrades to safety procedures. After a third-party review, staff are recommending the city lay out a long-term vision for the ferry system. Among other priorities is calling for enhancements to crew recruitment and streamlined communications with the public. The proposal goes before council this month.
And road closures are now in effect in Burlington to help reduce an endangered species. King Road is shut from North Service Road to Mountain Brow Road, and it's to prevent Jefferson salamanders from being run over as they migrate to their spring breeding ponds. The closure has happened every year since 2012 and will be in place until April 9th. York Region is also planning a closure to help out the salamanders on a stretch of Stouffville Road that runs through the Oak Ridges Moraine.
Toronto Raptors are on a bit of a roll, and they'll look to keep the ball rolling tonight.
That's the first time that's happened in franchise history.
AJ! I can get to the iron. I can throw it down.
The Raptors beat the Washington Wizards 119-101 Monday and have only lost one of their past 5 games. Tonight, Toronto hosts the Philadelphia 76ers, who are 2-8 in their last 10. Tip-off is shortly after 7:30.
Meanwhile, the 2025 WNBA draft will be held April 14th in New York City. The Dallas Wings have the #1 pick, followed by the Seattle Storm. The Toronto Tempo's expansion draft will be held after the 2025 season. They begin play in 2026 with home games at Coca-Cola Coliseum. After the break, 9 lives for a California cat. A senior's Maine Coon is found 2 months after going missing in the LA wildfires. The tearful reunion with her favorite feline when we come back.
Tonight, the rate cut in the middle of a trade war.
Depending on the extent and duration of new U.S. tariffs, the economic impact could be severe.
The fight against inflation and the impact on our wallets. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special good evening to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Tomorrow at 6, tackling tariffs in Washington.
I want to find out where the bar is set.
What Premier Ford's high-stakes meeting
you can't tackle Donald Trump
could mean for Ontario.
Let's move forward.
Tomorrow on CTV News at 6. It appears the old saying about cats having 9 lives may be true for a California feline named Aggie.
The beloved pet was feared dead for 2 months after the Palisades wildfire in Los Angeles. But her owner held out hope, and over the weekend, Catherine Kiefer got a call from an animal shelter, which led to a tearful reunion. An emotional Kiefer said she was very much worried she was going to wake up and discover that this had all been a dream. Aggie the cat is now doing well and will be released from hospital tomorrow.
What a great story.
How lovely.
Makes
My
you
goodness.
thankful. Also thankful for the weather that we're having.
Cat came back.
Yes.
Cat came back. And yes, we do have some very nice weather to be thankful for over the next couple of days here. We'll take one more look at the satellite and radar. All is looking pretty clear as we head through the night tonight. A little bit of cloud draping across southern Ontario, but we should be active weather free for the next little bit here. So there's that radar imagery. Here's a look at what you can expect tomorrow. Maybe you're headed to the dog park. A reminder, things are getting a little bit muddy out there with some of the melting that continues to happen. So maybe stick a towel in your car if that's where you're going. 7-day forecast. We don't really have rain in the forecast until the weekend, but we could get a decent amount of it Saturday and into Sunday. Temperatures are still going to be quite mild, though. Nathan and Natalie.
Well, that's it for us. Be sure to join Heather Wright tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Andrea Case with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.
That's the best part of the show.